Family and fellow soldiers, I'm the Professor, and this is the Moment of Truth. I'm going to start this morning's briefing with the preface that this is going to be a subject revolving around one of the four subjects that black folks don't handle very well, entertainment. So before people decide that they're going to let this devolve into a world star hip-hop type discussion, let's not. Remember, we are the B1 here. And let me also say that this is not about Young Thug, any more than my previous video essays were an endorsement of R. Kelly. I didn't know who Young Thug was before this whole RICO controversy started, and now that I know who he is, I still don't care. This is not about him. This is about government who figures, particularly prosecutors, that they can come at black people with these charges that make no sense, charges that don't fit, charges that they never throw at other people, certainly not in the same manner. And it's always something that they do that involves a blatant violation of a black person's basic constitutional rights. That's what these prosecutors always make it a point to do. It's always got to be something that is just an egregious violation of a black person's basic rights. I told you about Timothy Taylor, who the FBI falsely labeled as a person of interest in the case of that missing white girl, Brittanee Drexel. Timothy Taylor had been involved in an armed robbery, but he had served his time in the state prison and he was now staying out of trouble. But the feds, determined to find a black person to pin the Drexel case on, they selected Taylor to be their target. They brought federal charges against Taylor due to the robbery, even though that was a blatant violation of double jeopardy. And the entire reason that the feds pulled that illegal stunt was because they wanted to hang the possibility of federal prison time over Taylor's head as a way to force him into admitting to kidnapping and killing Brittanee Drexel, a woman he never even met. They were trying to get him to go ahead and do some sort of plea deal with him so he could say, "See, we told you the nigger did it." When Drexel's killer was identified and arrested, not only was it not Taylor, it wasn't even a black man, it was a white serial pedophile. And to this day, the FBI refuses to apologize to Mr. Taylor or his family. We all remember how that crooked DA in Pennsylvania illegally moved to admit Bill Cosby's civil deposition into his criminal trial, even though they knew it was illegal and the judge knew it was illegal too. This constant violation of black people's rights is allowed to happen because under white supremacy, there is no justice. They don't do this with other people. That's because they want to make it clear that this kind of over-the-top oppression is reserved only for black people. And they think they can do this to us and get away with it because we haven't yet organized ourselves and our resources sufficiently to punish them for targeting us. But we're working on it. Now, this Young Thug character, according to the authorities, he allegedly runs with a pretty rough crowd. And because of that, they feel that his rap lyrics somehow is him admitting to crimes that he's been involved in, particularly a killing, which seems to be one of the lyrics that the DA, Fani Willis, has locked onto as her justification for a RICO charge, apparently talking about a murder in his rap songs. And yet, if Fani Willis really believes that Young Thug was admitting to killings that he committed, why is it then that she's not charging him with murder? From the article, the rapper is not accused of murder, but of allegedly renting a car that was used in the killing of a rival gang member. So this isn't even about Young Thug committing a murder, which is the entire reason that Fani Willis wants his lyrics to be admitted, because apparently he was talking about a killing in one of his songs. So apparently this is Fani Willis's case. She has no proof that Young Thug rented the car with the intent or even knowledge that it would be used in a crime. And on top of that, she can't prove that Young Thug wrote the lyrics that she's trying to claim connect him to a crime. How does she know that he doesn't have a ghostwriter who writes his lyrics for him? Besides, back in the day, Ice Cube used to write Eazy-E's lyrics. What she's trying to do is the very definition of a thought crime. So she's accusing him of renting a car, but she can't prove that he intended for it to be used in a crime or even knew that it would be. And she's trying to incriminate him for saying lyrics that she can't even prove that he wrote. Talk about reaching. But of course, when the target is a black person, there's no tall tale that's too ridiculous. Now, there is something that I want to mention quickly because it needs to be said. The rapper L.A. Draco is mentioned in this article, and he was also prosecuted by the LA DA's office under similar circumstances. His lyrics were also used as evidence, quote-unquote, against him. The DA who prosecuted Draco the Ruler? Jackie Lacey. You'll recall she was the infamous Mammy DA whose husband thought that it would be a good idea to go point a gun at BLM activists who were protesting his corrupt wife. Lacey had already tried and failed to get Draco the Ruler locked up on murder and conspiracy to commit murder charges. He was acquitted on those, but then she refiled charges for criminal gang conspiracy and shooting from a motor vehicle. Sure reminds you of the Cosby trial, doesn't it? They just keep going back and back to see if there's any sort of charge that hasn't been acquitted yet. Because this isn't about whether the black man did it or not. It's about DAs who want to make their bones by proving to the white powers that be the lengths they'll go to lock a black person up, to show that they have absolutely no sympathy with and no camaraderie with black people. That's what this is about. No matter how feeble the charge, no matter how flimsy or false the charges are, just keep throwing charges against the wall. Sooner or later, law of averages has to kick in and you'll get the black person on something. On November 4th, 2020, Lacey managed to wear Draco the Ruler down into agreeing to a plea deal. He only did it because he had already been made to serve 3 years in jail, and prosecutors said if he pled to a gang enhancement charge, they let him go. Speaking of being let go, while Draco the Ruler was leaving jail, Jackie Lacey found out she'd be leaving office after she lost the election. So all that butt-kissing and all of that dirtbag maneuvering she did to try to prove how she would cut a black person's throat, and she still lost the election. So all those Biden Republicans or casual racists that she was hoping to win the support of didn't turn out for her. Gee, I wonder why. Draco had been charged with both murder and attempted murder, and he was acquitted of both charges. The only thing that the DA was actually able to get a conviction on was felony gun possession, which, by the way, is a penny-any charge when you're bringing a RICO case against someone. But this is what ABC was trying to reach for when they wrote that when the Los Angeles rapper was initially convicted, his lyrics were used against him as evidence. They don't point out the only thing that he was convicted on was a gun charge. So while they did mention that he was acquitted of murder and attempted murder charges, they don't point out to people, hey, they didn't get him on anything but having a gun when he wasn't supposed to. And that's done deliberately for the sake of leaving the reader thinking, well, they didn't get him on murder or attempted murder, they must have got him on some other violent charge. That's basically weasel words, creating a false association in the reader's minds. You mention murder and attempted murder, and then you say he was convicted, without telling the reader that the conviction was for a non-violent offense and one that clearly didn't warrant a RICO case. This is putting an anti-black slant on the reporting to make it seem as if there's some sort of precedent here when there's really not. The Draco the Ruler case, at least in the way that it was handled, doesn't bear any resemblance to what's going on with Young Thug. And as far as using his lyrics against him, Jackie Lacey tried it and failed. But this is about giving the reader a false impression that, oh, you see, this has been done before. This is the first time it's been tried. That part may be accurate. But when they leave out the fact that Jackie Lacey's maneuver failed against Draco the Ruler, well, that's called lying by omission. So these black DAs, they think that they can make their bones to white daddy by holding up some black person, portraying him as the embodiment of all evil, and then having a white jury convict him. It's the political equivalent of a human sacrifice. This is about the criminalization of anything a black person says. This isn't about socially shunning someone or taking their TV show or taking their music contract from them. This is about putting black people in prison merely for words. And the trash like Jackie Lacey and Fani Willis doing this, they know it. They know the sick game that they're playing where they make a big show out of lynching a black person in the courts. They never choose to make it a white person that they go after because it's white Democrats who they want to win the favor of. They know better than to decide that they're going to do a judicial lynching of a white person. You don't hold up a white person as the embodiment of evil, especially not if you're a black DA trying to do that. So Fani Willis, she knows she's got to prove that she's totally and completely devoted to white power, and that means she has to demonstrate that she is as crooked towards black people, as unjust towards black people, as willing to defy the law to railroad a black person as any racist white supremacist DA out there. Well, Fani Willis needs to be thrown out on her fanny, because nobody's using RICO laws to go after these white supremacist terrorists. And we know for a fact that they're not working alone. They're part of an ongoing criminal enterprise. Nobody ever decides to connect the dots between these white supremacists who commit these acts of violence, be it the race attacks against black people or even the attempted overthrow of the U.S. government last January. Nobody tries to connect those dots, probably because they already know what the connections are. And we always see these white supremacists organizing online, and it's always on the same handful of websites. 4chan, Reddit, Facebook, Discord. Nobody's used the power of the state to compel these websites to hand over the info they have on who's been in what chat groups and whether there's overlap between these people. And it's not as if these tech companies put up a fight. Most of the time when the government says give us the information, that's exactly what they do. They roll right over and give it. Because I'm willing to bet there's not much separation at all between the people who Dylan Roof was talking to online and the people who the 4chan terrorist in Minneapolis were talking to, or the people who Peyton Gendron was talking to. I outlined for you in yesterday's Moment of Truth how in practically all the white race terrorist attacks in this country over the last 150 years, the assailants are always closely connected with law enforcement, and in many cases, the race terrorists are law enforcement themselves. How closely connected are these people? You want to talk about putting RICO charges on someone? Tucker Carlson is still on the loose along with the rest of the white hysteria race baiters who caused the mass murder in Buffalo. We know for a fact that one of the writers for Tucker Carlson's satanic sideshow was in fact posting racist comments online for years under a pseudonym. And not only did Carlson not rebuke this person, he defended them as not being so bad. So it's obvious that when we see racist comments online, there's a very real possibility it's a Fox News employee, probably someone who works for Tucker Carlson. But again, nobody does the most obvious thing of all and ask if any of the racist people who work for Tucker Carlson and post racist crap online have also been in contact with these white race terrorists to help them plan or encourage some sort of attack. Tucker Carlson spouts all the same anti-black rhetoric that Peyton Gendron did in his so-called manifesto. In fact, that manifesto basically read like a crib note version of Tucker Carlson's own maniacal rantings. And when you consider that Carlson has employed people in the past who are heavily involved in hate speech online, it's just common sense to ask if maybe Tucker Carlson has also been conducting his anti-black hysterics outside of his Fox News studio. The entire point behind RICO charges is to judge people by the company they keep. Well, in that case, then, Tucker Carlson should have been eating charges a long time ago. We now know that Peyton Gendron was in contact frequently with at least one federal agent, albeit retired. But nobody's asked who was Dylan Roof in contact with. Just like Gendron and the 4chan terrorist, Roof was also part of an online terror cell. Who from Fox News might they have been talking to? We don't know, and the so-called authorities make it a point never to ask. They make it a point to never go any farther than the shooter because they know that if an investigation did go any further, then they would immediately see that there's people in the government and in the media who were instrumental in the planning and execution of these terror attacks. Well, for my part, I hope Young Thug sues that heifer Fani Willis for prosecutorial misconduct, malicious prosecution, whatever he can get. There's no way to know if the crimes Young Thug is accused of having been a part of had anything at all to do with his lyrics, but one thing is indisputably clear. Fani Willis sold her soul for a song. Good day, and be one. I'd like to take a moment to mention some of our contributors. Justin Marcus, Sandra Bates, Murad Campbell, Chloe, and Cordelia Dudas. Salute to them and thank you to everyone for listening, liking, and sharing this message. Black empowerment only exists because of you.